Hi, everyone. We're just going to give a minute for others to join. In the meantime, check out what we will be serving up today. Hi, everyone. I'm Erica, Food Empowerment Project's Communications and Marketing Manager. Welcome to event 1 of our Eat Your Ethics 4-part series. We are so excited to have you here with us. For those who do not know who we are Food Empowerment Project, a vegan food justice organization that was founded in 2007 by a very proud Hispanic woman, Lauren Ornelas. We work on a variety of issues surrounding the food industry with 4 core programmatic areas. We promote ethical veganism through education, outreach, and by providing tools. We advocate for the rights of farm workers by supporting corporate, legislative, and regulatory changes. We work with community members to survey access to healthy foods in Black and Brown communities. And last but not least, we work to inform consumers around the globe about the worst forms of child labor, including slavery, that take place for chocolate. The goal of our event series is to provide you with information and resources that will help you eat your ethics. Today's event will be covering Veganism Part 1, which includes some land animals that are killed for food, who are killed for food, the chocolate industry, how to shop with care, along with the Q&A at the end, so be sure to utilize that Q&A box that's located at the bottom of your screen. We will also give you details about future events in the series where we will cover even more topics. As we begin this event, we would like to take a moment to acknowledge the land we are currently residing on. We recognize that this land was stolen from the original inhabitants of these areas and want to take a moment to honor, remember, and pay our respect to the elders, both past and present, who have stewarded this land for generations. We're excited to tell you we will be giving away a box of chocolate goodies, including a copy of our vegan Mexican food and vegan Filipino food recipe booklets to one lucky participant who stays till the very end of today's event. As you probably know, it is Women's History Month, so we'd like to honor the amazing women, past and present, who have taught us to continue to rise, fight, and thrive regardless of the barriers we face. If you follow us on social media, we have been highlighting some phenomenal women, such as Dolores Huerta. Her continued activism for not only food justice, but also civil rights and our LGBTQ+ community is inspirational, and we are so lucky to have her. And with all of that being said, please welcome the rest of the FEP team. Elise, our development associate, Ethan, our web content and database manager, Amanda, our campaigns associate, Sharanya, our executive director, and last but not least, Lauren, our founder. Before we jump in, I'm going to bring a quick poll up on your screen to see how many of you are long-term vegans, vegan noobs, or simply interested in going vegan. I'll give you about 10 seconds to choose. Great. Thank you so much for filling that poll out. It's so great to see how many of you are all here. So let's kick this event off by talking a little bit about some of the animals we share our land with. Today, we're going to focus on pigs and cows, but we'll share information and resources to learn more about the other land animals killed for food at the end of today's event. One thing you'll notice is that we don't have a trigger warning for the visuals in this presentation, and that's because no graphic images will be shown of humans or non-human animals. Although we're not showing graphic images, we will be talking about the reality both human and non-humans face in our food chain. So what you hear is likely to make you uncomfortable. The photos you will see in this webinar of non-human animals are of farmed animals living their lives out in sanctuaries. We're doing this intentionally because we want you to see these animals for the beautiful individuals that they are. Some of you may already know, but for those who do not, sanctuaries are safe havens for animals who have been rescued from horrific situations. How many of you have ever been to a farmed animal sanctuary? I'll bring up a quick poll and give you about 10 seconds to choose. Go so quick. There's so many little buttons. Awesome. It's so great to see so many of you have gone. And sanctuaries are just such a wonderful way to connect with these amazing animals. Elise will now come on to talk a little bit about pigs and cows. Elise?
Thanks so much, Erica. My name is Elise, and I officially joined the Food Empowerment Project team in December as the new development associate. And before working for FEP, I was a volunteer, and you may remember me from our virtual event last fall. Spring is here, which means it's a time perfectly suited for regeneration, growth, and new life being brought into the world. Today, I'm going to be talking about two spectacular land creatures, pigs and cows. As a warning, there will be points where I discuss the incredible violence these animals experience, and we actually had a long conversation as a team whether or not to share some of this. And while we would prefer to focus on these beautiful creatures for the individuals that they are, we felt it was important to talk about what the industry doesn't want you to know about their treatment. It's incredibly graphic and heartbreaking, and when I discuss what happens during their slaughter, the image on the screen will blur as a way to let you know. So if you need to mute me during that time, that's completely understandable. And when I'm done talking about it, the image will unblur. First, let's talk about pigs. Right about this time of year in nature, mother pigs are preparing for the birth of their babies by creating communal nesting sites made of vegetation. Soon, a mother pig will give birth to her piglets, and they'll embark on their own life journey. Pigs are amazing creatures. They are curious, intelligent, with strong instincts and an incredibly resourceful nature. The shape of their snout, you may notice it, and combined with their highly acute sense of smell, it makes it so pigs find food where other animals might have missed it. They can live over 20 years, leading full, complex, and stimulating lives where they grow and develop as individuals and build relationships. Having said all of that, their intelligence does not dictate whether or not they deserve our compassion, because pigs feel pleasure and they feel pain. Devastatingly, on farms where pigs are raised for slaughter, they never get to live those complex, curious lives and are instead forced to lead a miserable existence. They're deprived of everything they naturally crave and live in unimaginable mental and physical anguish. Mother pigs are forcefully and artificially inseminated and then thrown into cages called gestation crates where they can't even turn around. Just sit with that for a moment. During the 4 months of her pregnancy, when she's carrying her baby, she can't turn around. She'll bang her head against the bars and bite down on them out of mental frustration, out of isolation and confinement. She'll never be able to bury that beautiful nose into wild grass to forage for food or roll around in a cooling puddle on a hot day. After she gives birth, she's moved to a farrowing crate where she only has room to lie down and nurse her piglets for 2 to 3 weeks before her babies are stolen from her. She's impregnated again, and the process starts over. She'll live her entire life this way until her birth rate declines and she's sent off to slaughter. It's worth noting that gestation crates are banned in some states, but farrowing crates are still widely used around the world. Once those piglets reach 16 weeks old or so, they're sent to a finishing facility where they are forced into cramped group confinement and the conditions are filthy. It's standard practice when confining these individuals so tightly together to clip off their tails and even clip down their teeth without any painkillers. And The chronic pain they endure from those mutilations are unimaginable. They face countless health problems like respiratory issues and severe leg pain, and these are the lives they lead before being taken off to slaughter. On the last leg of their journey, before the pigs are slaughtered, they're transported for up to 36 hours without a rest period. They are provided with no food, no water, and are denied protection from extreme weather during this journey. If they've survived the elements and lack of resources during the truck ride, they are taken to the slaughterhouse, where they are forced to a kill floor and are sometimes stunned by either electrocution or a pointed bolt pistol that penetrates their brain. But their heart keeps beating. If you've ever had an opportunity to interact with a pig at a sanctuary, you may have noticed that they have thick, coarse hair to protect them. After they are stunned, they are cut open and dropped into scalding hot water to loosen those hairs. Pigs have been documented to be alive during every stage of this process. These beautiful individuals deserve so much more, and we have the power to make a difference. While Food Empowerment Project hasn't done investigations into factory farms, it's not part of our work, our founder, Lauren, has done those investigations into places where they raise pigs for food. So we wanted to give her an opportunity to speak about what she's witnessed. And also to mention some of the things she'll be talking about will be graphic, so the screen will be blurred at that point.
Thanks, Elise. And thank you all for being here today with us and for learning how you can eat your ethics. I thought it was important to, hear Elise, have somebody talk about what we know happens in these facilities, but also to reinforce that this isn't just something you read about on a website or you watch one documentary and it's one time that it happens. That every single time I did my investigations, it was constant what I saw. Every single time I went into that shed, that barn, what I saw was horrific abuse of animals, even when there were no workers around. It was just their basic living conditions. So I did investigations of pig farms in North Carolina and in Georgia. And in Georgia, I went to a small farm, and it was a mama pigs in the gestation crates, where the mama pigs couldn't turn around, and they were consistently banging their heads on the gates to try to get out. They couldn't turn around. All they could do was stand and sit down. And, to keep in mind that these pigs are in either a gestation crate or a farrowing crate for 4 years until about when their piglet production goes down. So after I did these investigations, it wouldn't matter what I did. I would think those pigs are still there. I might have traveled. I might have done all sorts of things, but those pigs were still in those crates. That I went to these so-called finishing places where there were dead piglets, flies all over them, cobwebs everywhere. One farm that I investigated in North Carolina, where I thought that there was a petrified corpse in the middle of the 2 rows. So basically the rows of the pens where the pigs were, and in the middle is where the worker walks. And I saw a corpse of a pig, and as I was getting closer, I thought there was a plastic bag there, a white plastic bag there. And as I got closer, I actually realized it was a pig who was so thin. And what the workers did, and again, they're part of an abusive system as well, but they would do is they would put the pigs that were sick in the middle so they wouldn't infect the other pigs. And there were other pigs trying to touch hooves with a sick piglet in the middle. I videotaped pigs who died right in front of me, who had ulcerations on their bodies, and pigs who, had the ability when they were still small in these quote unquote finishing areas that would run to me with their ears flapping with the dog, like dogs would. So we just, this intense suffering that these animals go through, all for the humans' desire to eat them, is something that we're hoping you'll think twice about today. Thanks, Elise.
Thank you, Lauren. Next, I want to talk about the majestic creatures that are cows. In nature, cows, as animals who only eat plants, spend much of their time grazing in herds, never more than a few miles away from water. Can you believe that cows have a 4-chamber stomach to help them digest all of their food? In addition to a specialized digestive system, cows have beautiful, large, widely spaced eyes that allow for panoramic vision. And I think how amazing it would be to get to see the world wide-angle view all the time. Cows are known for their extremely gentle nature and caring instincts. For instance, the maternal bond between a mother and her calf is as strong as any bond you'll see in nature. She carries her baby for 9 months before giving birth, which is similar to human mothers. There are many important factors in a calf's development, but nothing is more important than their mother's milk, which is uniquely created to help their 80 to 100-pound calf grow into a 1,000-pound plus adult. In addition to the incredible bonds formed between mother and calf, adult cows also form strong bonds as they spend many hours each day foraging, ruminating, and grooming each other. Over time, a herd grows to include several generations of relatives, with some of the oldest members being more than 25 years old. In an all too familiar pattern, cows raised for their flesh or milk or are not seen as individuals, but as commodities, and as such, their life are completely dictated by the humans who control their lives. They do not get to live out the natural rhythm of their life as they should and are stripped of fulfilling some of their most basic instincts. When cows are raised for, quote, meat, males are mutilated by castration without any painkillers. Those cows spend the first 6 to 8 months of their life grazing, which can fulfill some natural instincts, but this grazing period is often in confinement, and they face other issues like lack of shelter from extreme weather. After the grazing period, they are sent to feedlots, where the goal is to add on a significant amount of weight in a short time window. Once they reach the desired size at around 14 to 16 months, they're sent off to slaughter. And cows can live up to 25 years, so they're babies when they're slaughtered. In the dairy industry, mother cows are forcefully and artificially inseminated and are pregnant for 9 months before giving birth. Most babies are separated from their mothers at birth, and mother cows have been documented hiding their babies after giving birth because they know they'll be stolen from them. Female calves are raised for milk production, while most of the male calves are raised for, quote, veal production. Many babies are denied their mother's milk and her comforting affection, and most of the male calves' brief lives are spent confined in individual crates that are so small, these babies are unable to take a step, turn around, or even stretch their limbs. At 16 to 20 weeks old, they're slaughtered and sold as a delicacy. Stripped of their children, mother cows are forcefully and painfully drained of their milk. This process will be repeated for the next 2 to 4 years of her life, and once her milk production has decreased, she's sent off to slaughter. As you can see, the dairy industry is just as culpable of causing pain, suffering, and death as the meat industry. If you want to eat your ethics, you'll want to take dairy off your plate. Like pigs, cows with no protection from the elements during this journey when they're sent off to slaughter. When they arrive at the slaughterhouse, each individual is forced into a stunning box, designed to restrain them so they can be stunned. A bolt pistol is placed firmly against their forehead and fired. After being stunned, they are shackled by the hind leg, raised off the ground, and the cow's throat is cut. During the bleeding process, many cows regain some degree of consciousness and their limbs flail. Lauren has witnessed some of these atrocities firsthand and is going to share some of her experience with us.
Thanks, Elise. And like Elise mentioned, cows, like all mammals, need to be pregnant in order to produce milk. So none of the male cows are of any use to the industry whatsoever. And there's a variety of things they're doing with these cows. Some are they're trying to fatten some up to put them with slaughter like beef cows. But the vast majority are just killed pretty much soon as after they're born. I personally went to an auction house where I saw baby male calves being auctioned off when their umbilical cords were still wet. I saw, the most amazing. I think that for me, when I did investigations, the majority of times it was just me doing the investigations with other activists. But the minute humans were involved, it was harder to document what was taking place. And one of these was a prime example was a beautiful Angus steer that I saw at an auction house, who was beautiful, majestic looking animals who slipped as they were rushing them into the auction ring. And they prodded and poked and slapped this animal who, by all means could have really taken them out. And yet the disregard for life is so obvious at these auction houses. The other thing when you do these investigations is how many times you may see photos or videos and stuff, and then you go and you actually see these things for real, that it's so hard to imagine that these cruel types of devices actually exist, but they do. I went to a veal farm in California, and I saw the calves there constantly kicking in front of them because they couldn't turn around. They were so frustrated, and I couldn't imagine what it would be like to just simply not be able to turn around, to simply face forward the entire time. I saw in Georgia in a small farm, and again, I think it's important to remember that when you look at the dairy, all of these industries, it doesn't really matter how big or how small they are, because many of them are using some of these same devices. So even though I visited some very small farms, they still continue to use things like small crates. And the one I taped in Georgia, and maybe if any of you have seen my talks in the past, I share the audio of a mom and her baby bellowing back and forth to each other after they've been separated. The mom bellows, the baby cries, and back and forth as long as I videotaped. And a lot of the female calves are in small crates as well. And many people may see these in places like California and actually think that they're veal crates where the males are kept into the small crates where they can't turn around. This is actually the same conditions in which the females are put in, where they are kept in confinement. And because it's easier for the industry just to leave them there, because otherwise if they move around too much, they're going to expend too much energy, and then they have to feed them more. But these crates are like hutches. Other crates that I've witnessed, they actually have the females are actually chained by the neck. And so I videotaped in the Central Valley of California, which gets very hot, a calf who died with a chain around her neck because she had kicked over her water bowl and there was nobody there to replace it. A lot of people talk about the happy cows in California. Unfortunately, these same small farms do the exact same things to these female calves. So unfortunately, these types of abuses and systems are in place, not just in California, around the country. And at the end of the day, these animals are killed for food. Doesn't matter how big or how small the farm is. This is what they're about. So I'm going to just shift us into another realm, and I think that probably the images will change too. But to talk about the impact that not only animal consumption has on non-human animals, but also the impact it has on humans as well. And that's when we look at the environmental waste, the environmental racism that takes place. So if you aren't familiar with that term, that's basically when Black and brown indigenous communities are more impacted by negative pollutants than white or more affluent areas are. And these are areas where you have mostly truck depots and toxic waste facilities and dumps, but it happens as well when we look at factory farms or any type of farms that have animals. So in North Carolina, where I did in my investigations, where the smell was just unbearable, you have community members who are predominantly Black or indigenous who are living near these facilities who experience respiratory problems, nosebleeds, they have headaches, and their property values are worthless because nobody wants to live near one of these facilities. If I could try to even explain the smell, it's unbearable. But this is where people live. They can't even open their windows in the summer times because the flies are so bad. And we have a similar situation in California, where we have some of the largest dairy farms. And so farms as big as this one, as you can see, can have like 17,000 cows on it. And it's in the Central Valley of California, which is predominantly the Latinx community living. So to try to put this in perspective about waste, one dairy cow produces 120 pounds of waste per day. So imagine you see a small farm, or maybe you're buying milk from you're considering a small dairy. Even if that dairy only has 20 cows, the dairy may only have 20 cows, but yet they're still producing 120 pounds of wet manure a day. That's 2,400 pounds of manure in a month. So yeah, we go from this is the reality, and this is the reality of what communities are living with. But we look past dairy, we look at that, but we also look at what does dairy mean to us? What does dairy mean to our bodies? And for many of us who are Black and brown and Indigenous, we recognize the impact that colonization has had on our lives. We recognize that, at least for me, being Indigenous to the Americas, Columbus brought cows over on the 4th voyage. So why is it that maybe my ancestors couldn't digest milk, what some people call lactose intolerant? Food Empowerment Project calls lactose normal, because there's nothing normal about consuming the milk of another species. But even more so, recognizing that this is a product of colonization, there's nothing natural about us consuming it anyway. That's why it doesn't do well when we consume it. That's why our bodies have a problem with it. And I could talk a lot more about that, but I'm just going to leave it there because we can talk about it at another time or later on. But I want to talk about more, these are heavy topics. These are things that are excruciatingly difficult and painful if you care about animals to know it's taking place right now. So what is it that you can do? Now, if you have access to healthy foods, we encourage you to go vegan. It's one of the easiest ways you can lessen suffering of non-human animals. Now, we know not everybody has access to healthy foods. That's something we're going to talk about later. It's also something we want to work with if that's what's taking place in your community. We also know that farm workers are impacted by our food choices. We'll talk about that more as well. But just sticking to the topic of if you have access to healthy foods, the things you can do that's very easy is to simply quit eating animals. And we have some ways to help you. We have a couple of websites. We have Vegan Filipino Food, which is in English and Tagalog. We have Vegan Mexican Food, which is in English and in Spanish. And we will soon be coming out with Vegan Lao Food, which is going to be in English and Lao. And all these websites are full of recipes. We also have some recipes on our main site as well. And we're always ready to help you on this journey to lessen the suffering and eat your ethics.
Thank you, Lauren. So as we're getting to the halfway point, I'm going to take over. We're going to talk about another way that you can eat your ethics, and that involves chocolate. A lot of chocolate, as you know, contains milk from cows. So after talking about the suffering that cows and their children endure in the dairy industry, we think that it's important to talk about abuses in the chocolate industry. My name is Amanda, and I'm the newest member of the team. Before I started recently as FEP's campaigns associate, I was working on updating the pages on our website, such as the page on child labor and slavery in the chocolate industry. So in addition to sharing information about the abuses in the industry to those of you who are new to this issue, I will also be sharing some recent updates for people who are already aware of our work on chocolate. I want to prepare you all before hearing this that it is really heartbreaking information, as I'm sure you can imagine. And we want to share it with you all because we know you came here today interested in learning more about how to eat your ethics. And we think it's important to spread the word about this, especially because a lot of people have no idea that the worst forms of child labor and slavery are so common in the chocolate industry. And it's through our awareness of these issues and our individual choices and our collective voices that we can make a difference. In Western Africa and Brazil, the worst forms of child labor as well as slavery are prevalent on cocoa farms. And the worst forms of child labor is actually an official category, and that's defined as labor that's likely to harm the health, safety, or morals of children. Western Africa, specifically Ghana and the Ivory Coast, is where 70% of cocoa is grown, meaning that the majority of chocolate companies use cocoa grown using the worst forms of child labor and slavery. So that includes large industry giants like Hershey's and Nestle, etc., as well as a lot of vegan chocolate companies, both small and large ones. Reporters have documented these abuses in Western Africa for decades, but only recently the worst forms of child labor and slavery were discovered on cocoa farms in Brazil. It's very common for children working on cocoa farms to be trafficked, meaning that they're forced into labor against their will. And it's so common that a journalist said that they found children who were trafficked on every single cocoa farm that they visited in Ghana. Traffickers will abduct children from their families and bring the children hundreds of miles away to places where they often don't even speak the language. They're often between 12 and 16 years old, but reporters have found children as young as 5 years old on cocoa farms. So these children are forcibly taken from their loved ones and spend their days working instead of going to school or playing with their friends and doing everything that kids should be doing. There are actually currently 2 court cases in the US, which some of you may have heard of, related to child trafficking in cocoa. The plaintiffs in both cases are men who were trafficked from Mali to the Ivory Coast when they were children. And they're seeking damages from companies like Nestle, Cargill, Hershey's, and Mars for knowingly profiting off of the worst forms of child labor and slavery in their supply chain. In one of the cases, the men described how they were given only scraps of food to eat and were kept in locked rooms at night. I want to emphasize that, how children are literally locked into their rooms at night to prevent them from escaping. I want to give a warning before this next part that it contains very upsetting information about physical violence against children. So we will be blurring the image on the screen again, and if you want to turn off the sound until I'm done with this part, the image will become unblurred when I finish. The formerly enslaved people in this court case also described how they faced violence from guards if they attempted to escape. One example they gave is that guards would punish children who tried to flee by cutting open their feet. They also said that if they worked too slowly, that guards would beat them with tree branches. It's very common for children working on cocoa farms to experience physical violence like this. Children working on cocoa farms face other dangers as well. They work with hazardous tools, such as machetes, to cut the cocoa pods down from the trees and later hack them open and wind up with wounds and cuts on their bodies. They also have to carry bags of cocoa pods that weigh over 100 pounds through the forest. They are also exposed to toxic agricultural chemicals that they have to spray on the cocoa pods. They're especially at risk because they do not have any protective clothing, and these are often very young children, as young as 5 years old, doing the spraying. We recently learned that there's been a huge increase in the number of children exposed to these dangerous chemicals on cocoa farms. So 10 years ago, 15% of children were exposed, and today, about half of all children who work in cocoa in Ghana and the Ivory Coast are exposed to these toxic chemicals. Some of you may be wondering, why is there child labor and slavery in the chocolate industry? And the reason is that chocolate companies choose not to pay cocoa farmers who own the farms enough to survive. Cocoa farmers need to be paid, at the very minimum, a living income, and that's the amount of money that would cover their basic needs. As long as cocoa farmers do not make enough to live off of, they will not have enough to pay their workers a living income either, and the worst forms of child labor and slavery will continue to be prevalent in the cocoa industry. So for instance, even children who are working on their parents' cocoa farms are often doing so because the parents are not paid enough for their cocoa. Many parents really want to send their children to school, but they can't because they have no choice but to include them in the harvest. And on top of that, they usually can't afford to send them to school with the very little that they make from cocoa. One parent in Brazil described, "If I didn't have this rope around my neck, my 12-year-old son who works in the harvest would be studying. Some of you may also be wondering about labels such as fair trade, as well as UTZ and Rainforest Alliance. Those just recently merged to one label. Do those mean that the worst forms of child labor and slavery are not used to make chocolate? And unfortunately, we found that labels do not mean much. Instances of trafficked children have been found on certified fair trade farms as recently as 2017. UTZ and Rainforest Alliance actually sponsored a study that found that there were even more children working on their certified farms than on other non-certified farms in the Ivory Coast. Certifiers also only have inspectors visit about 10% of farms to make sure that they're complying with standards. So 90% of farms that are certified aren't even ever visited by anyone. And even those 10% of inspections that happen can't be trusted. In one case, a requirement for clean bathrooms was checked off on an evaluation checklist, even though none of the farms had bathrooms. So the evaluator said, yep, all the bathrooms are clean, but there wasn't even a single bathroom on any of those farms for the workers to use. Certifications are not a solution to the problem that chocolate companies need to pay cocoa farmers a living income. Chocolate companies that have been forced to admit that the worst forms of child labor and slavery exist in their supply chain claim that they are opposed to these abuses, and you'll see these companies doing that. But it's important to remember that they are choosing not to take the clear steps that they need to take to stop this harm, which is paying farmers more. I'm going to pass it back to Lauren now to speak a little bit more about why we're working on this issue and our chocolate list that helps people make more ethical choices.
Thanks, Amanda. And thank you all for, again, attending this, knowing that we're going to do it the Food Empowerment Project way, that eating our ethics goes beyond just the non-human animals. It includes the human animals as well. And the reason why I decided to have chocolate be one of the main issues we work on is because of a documentary that I saw in 2000. And basically, a reporter had asked a formerly enslaved person from the cacao industry, what would you say to Westerners who still eat chocolate? And their response was, tell them when they're eating chocolate, they're eating my flesh. And I thought that's the same thing as a non-human animal would say. And I knew that there was no way I could look at chocolate the same way. That to me, learning about this was just like the first time I saw a little chick having the tips of their beak cut off. That this was something I knew I didn't want to participate in anymore. And I felt like that the more people learned about it, they certainly wouldn't want to participate in it as well. So when I started Food Empowerment Project, I wanted it to be one of the key areas because many times, vegans presume that just because they're not eating non-human animals, that somehow their food is cruelty-free. And I would see recipe booklets and guides that would say cruelty-free recipes, and they would include recipes with chocolate in them. And I knew that I needed to make sure that vegans understood that just because something was vegan didn't mean it was cruelty-free, that if it still involves the suffering of human animals, whether it be chocolate or any other industry, doesn't mean it's cruelty-free. And for me, I went vegan because of compassion and justice, that I didn't want these things to happen to non-human animals. And I felt like this was no different, that I was able to make the decision based on my ethics about what I wanted to support and not support as a vegan. And I knew my circle of compassion should be extended to all. So as you heard Amanda go into detail, it is imperative that we stop supporting what's happening there, and we stop this injustice in its tracks. Again, while we're here, we're talking about actual slavery. We're talking about children who are being locked in at night and adults who are kept in slavery for chocolate. It is outrageous to think that it's okay that this is still existing today. So when I started to talk about this issue, people would say to me, which maybe some of you are thinking, well, what can I buy? Is there any chocolate I can buy? I'm not ready to give up chocolate. So we created a list, which we placed on our website, and it's grown, we started in 2007. This list has grown tremendously, but we have a list on our website of chocolates we do and do not recommend solely based on where the cacao is coming from. It's not based on any type of certifications. As you heard, a lot of the certifications have been found to be incredibly problematic. But So it's just based on country of origin, and every company that's on the list has to at least make one vegan chocolate. As a vegan organization, our goal is to get people to eat their ethics, stop consuming non-human animals, extend their compassion to human animals. So this list has to do both. It has to mean that we're making sure that we are not supporting injustice or harm to either one. So the companies have to make at least one vegan chocolate, sorry. And we update this list monthly. We have an amazing volunteer, Dana, who, if you send us the name of a company that you don't see on our list, they make a vegan chocolate, we will look into that company and find out where they're sourcing it from. And our list has these categories broken down. So we'll tell you if we recommend them. If we don't recommend them, we'll tell you why. Are they not being transparent, which I find to be the most unbelievable excuse of a corporation, to say that they're not going to be transparent about where their cacao is coming from, when literally we are asking for country of origin. We're not asking for the state, the city, we're literally just asking for country of origin, and some companies feel this is proprietary. Unfortunately, this includes a lot of vegan companies. We tell you if we don't recommend them because they're sourcing from these areas. We're very, very transparent with you on why we're not recommending companies. So again, you help us build our list. So as I was doing this, talking about the issue in chocolate, and we had this website up, some people were like, hey, I really want to have this that I can use in the stores. We know nothing about apps at the time. We did create an app. We have two apps, one for the Apple and one for the Android. And basically, you can take this when you go grocery shopping. You can see the video here. It tells you if we recommend them or not. You can tap on it, find out why we don't recommend them. You can also use this as a tool to contact the companies. So we believe very much that our individual choices, right? We should all eat our ethics, but it's equally important that we hold corporations accountable by using our collective voices. A lot of companies don't respond to us, but if you reach out to them, then all of a sudden they respond, they reach back out to us. So we have that feature. It's going to be improved. We're going to have Twitter handles added on soon, and then you'll be able to contact the companies and it'll go to them directly. But right now, if you download our app, it is free. We want everybody to use it. We want everybody to try to eat their ethics, live their values to their most of their ability. So we have this app for you to download for free, and it should help you when you shop. If there's companies that you like, you can definitely just let us know and we can reach out to the companies. And we've also done one other thing to try and make it easier for people. We have a mascot for our chocolate, and their name is Chavez. Chavez is available if you go to some vegan grocery stores. You'll find these tags up next to the chocolate that we recommend. So if you see Chavez with the thumbs up, you know that's a chocolate that we recommend. If you know of a vegan grocery store that doesn't have them up, just let us know and we will contact them and send them some tags. So again, very heavy issues today, right? I mean, again, food is something that if we have the privilege, we do several times a day, and there's a lot of responsibility that comes with these. So when we look at chocolate, what can you do? We're encouraging you to please use our chocolate list, which is available on our website. If you don't have the app, download the app. It's free, and we update it every month. And please use your voice to contact these companies, because even the ones that we recommend and you like them, it's important for them to hear from you saying, thank you for being, to care about where your cacao is coming from. It matters to me. Because what these corporations are doing, they're going on the basis that you care more about convenience and cost than you do about what's happening in Western Africa and in Brazil. And we have to show them that they are wrong. We do care, and we're going to use our voices as well as our dollars to make a difference.
Thanks so much, Amanda and Lauren. I hope this information gives everyone the motivation to make better choices with the help of our tools and resources. How many of you have already downloaded our free chocolate app? I'll bring a quick poll up to have you fill out, give you about 10 seconds. I know y'all can't see it on my end, but I can see like the poll just going. It looks so cool. Great. It's about half. That's so interesting. Thank you all so much. We're actually going to put a link in the chat where you are able to download the app today. So we've shown you that you can eat your ethics by going vegan and not buying chocolate that comes from the worst forms of child labor, including slavery. Here is another tip on how to shop with care. So there are a lot of companies that have very, very bad track records when it comes to human and non-human animals. These include Coca-Cola, Nestle, Monsanto, who is now owned by Bayer. And although it's not a company, we strongly encourage everyone to avoid palm whenever possible, which can be found in everything from beauty products to our food. We'll add a link to our website in the chat box where you can learn more about these companies and how you can avoid them. This next slide is a quick resource list that we encourage everyone to check out as well. The first two are books, with A for Activist being a children's book, and the third and fourth are documentaries that are free to watch online. We will be sending all of this information out via email with links after the event, but feel free to take a screenshot of this graphic now. And while we give you a couple minutes to send us your questions, we really want to hear from you, so please do not hesitate to use that Q&A box. We're going to answer a couple common questions. We know in our event post, we said that we would be offering helpful tips for going and staying vegan. So if you have any questions related to that, please do send them our way. So let's start with, what does it mean to be vegetarian or a vegan? Sharanya, can you answer this question?
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you for being here with us today. I wanted to take this question because I was actually raised in a vegetarian family in India. And what that means is that it refers to the food that we were eating. And that meant that as vegetarians, we did not consume meat. However, before I became vegan, I still consumed products made from the milk of cows, or I wore clothing or footwear made from leather, and then products made from silk and wool as well. Veganism extends beyond just the diet. And so when I became vegan, it was a gradual transition, of course, as most people I think will relate to. I first stopped drinking milk from cows, but I also stopped wearing leather, wool, silk, and other materials made from non-human animals. I also stopped buying products that contained beeswax and honey. And that's something that I feel sometimes people don't think about. It's also important to remember that even if you take animal products out of your diet, we might still be contributing to the problem with other products in our lives. And I feel like FEP goes further than even veganism, because as Lauren mentioned before, we are looking at all aspects of the food system, and we're advocating for both humans and non-human animals that are impacted by it. What was really interesting for me to note is that, and I again feel this is something that a lot of people can relate to if they have made the transition, especially with their diet, is that as I was becoming vegan, there was a lot of educating that I had to do with my own family. I had heard from friends who had given up meat that they had to start that awareness process, starting with their family. I didn't expect it to be that hard for me personally, because I was going from being vegetarian to being vegan. So I mistakenly assumed that there would be this consciousness that since we don't consume meat, which is the flesh of an animal, that there would already be this understanding that there would be a transition to veganism at some point when that awareness came up. I still faced a lot of explaining, especially with the older generations in my family, my grandparents. And they asked me a lot of questions like, isn't milk from cows a part of our culture? Milking doesn't hurt a cow. How is that bad? Or how will you get your calcium and retain your strength? And so I felt like I had to do a lot of educating of myself and my family in order to counter this resistance. When I've had my first child, the impact of being vegan really sunk in on a whole nother level. And I was grateful that I was vegan, but my compassion for mother cows and their calves, who are separated from each other soon after the mother gives birth, hit me really hard. I was able to bond with my child while so many other mothers out there are stripped of this essential emotional phase. And I could only imagine what a mother cow was feeling when they were being separated from their babies during this bonding period. And it really reinforced for me personally that it was important to eat with my ethics. And like we've been saying before, we do have the power to change the world with our food choices. And by coming together to join our voices together, we can really call for such change. With that, I think we would love to get to all of your questions. And so Erica, I'm going to pass it back to you to be able to look at questions that we've received.
Thanks so much, Shadanya. So yes, we have received quite a few questions. Unfortunately, it looks like we have a little less than 10 minutes left. So we'll try to get through as many as we can before our time ends. So starting from the top, I'll work my way down and I'll pass it off to everyone, to whoever I think will be able to answer your question. So the first question is, how do you advise talking to people who are plant-based, see veganism as a diet, not a personality, about why it is important to be explicitly vegan? And I think, Shadanya, you kind of touched on that a little. Do you have anything else you could say about that?
Well, I think just personally, as I said before, as I started thinking about all of the aspects of my life and all of the things that I did on a daily basis that impacted non-human animals as well as humans, I felt it was an education for myself. And as I was learning more, that's when I started looking at other ways to stop using products that had a negative impact. I don't know if anyone else wants to speak to that as well.
Yeah, if Lauren, do you have anything more to say about that?
I was worried about how many questions we have, so I thought maybe we should just get to the next questions. I'm sorry.
No worries. So the next one I'm actually going to pass to you, Lauren, and that is, how do we hold large corporations accountable for their actions? Although I do believe we can protest with our shopping, supply and demand and protesting with our eating, I feel like there's only so much we can do on an individual level.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that, you know, what we choose individually is incredibly important, but if we really want to create in a serious change, and again, it depends on how big the corporation is, right? But depending on what it is, that we're going to need to join with other people. So an example is, you know, we support the Coalition of Immokalee Workers who are asking for Wendy's to sign the Fair Food Program. We know that what's going to help them achieve this, to get more farm worker rights and justice for them, is going to have others join in their campaign. Now, I could simply just not go to Wendy's, but is Wendy's going to know why I'm not going there? They're not going to know unless I reach out to Wendy's and say, you know what? I'm not going to you because I'm supporting the Coalition of Immokalee Workers. So I think that that's why it's really important. I mean, it's overwhelming, right? There's so much we could do, right? But at least we can try to lend our voices to the other campaigns of things that matter to us. There's a whole lot more that we can say about corporate campaigns. We have a campaign against Safeway right now. So definitely, if you want to talk more about that, I'm happy to do so. But I do think that it's a matter of airing anything. I mean, I will reach out to companies about anything. My tennis shoes are, you know, old. So I contact the company and ask them, are you taking these back? You know, and they're like, what are you talking about? But I need them to know that I demand some type of sustainability program from them. And so they have to hear from us. Thanks for the great question.
Thank you, Lauren. And I think you touched on this question as well already, Lauren. But the question is, many people choose small local farms because they think the animals are treated well until they are killed. How do we help people understand it's not true, especially since they all do in the end? And I think you already touched on that, but if you have anything more to add.
I would just say that I think that anytime somebody feels like they're buying from a small farm, if they're able to, just to say, you know, can they go visit the farm? Can they go along the whole process? Because at the end of the day, the animals are still killed. And we're doing our best now to remind people that even if it's a small farm, they can still be using some of the same mechanism that the larger farms use. They still could be using the gestation crate and the farrowing crate. That doesn't change just because they're big or small.
Absolutely. And so going down, and I am going to be skipping some questions. So if anyone is like, hey, you didn't get to mine, I'm going to go down so we can actually give you more detailed answers post-event via email. So we'll just get to the smaller questions right now. So another question was just going to ask about certifications. What resources should we use for updates on which brands are child labor free and paying workers livable wages? And I think just if we're talking specifically about chocolate, we would recommend our list. But if anyone else has anything else to add to that, please feel free to add to that now. Nothing else. Moving on. And this one is also about certifications. Are the misleading fair trade and certified labels true for all food products or just cocoa? Lauren, I think you have an answer to that.
You know, it's hard, right? Because when Food Empowerment Projects first started out, I wanted to believe that maybe it was just chocolate. And then I learned there's problems in coffee, and I learned there's problems in tea. There's a lot of stuff out there talking about it, and I wish that wasn't the case. But at this point, I don't think so. I think that if you're vegan who's asking this question, think about if you would tell somebody, well, which one of these certifications on my eggs work? You'd be like, not really, because the problems are still there. I think we have to have that same type of question when it comes to these certifications. And it's important to remember that most of these certifications are coming from the West, and they're being placed on the global South. And that in and of itself should give us reason for pause.
Yeah, and so this next question I really appreciate, and I think you will as well, Lauren. First, thank you all so much for an informative and important talk. As a vegan and woman of color, I have noticed a lack of intersectional understanding that is prevalent in the vegan community. I really appreciate the way your organization highlights human rights and accessibility issues in addition to veganism. And I'm interested to know if you have ever faced any pushback on this from the vegan community. And this is something we try to talk about as much as we can, the erasure of us in the movement. And so I'm sorry, Lauren, I'm going to pass it back to you.
Well, I think, we have. I mean, Food Empowerment Project started a long time ago, before a lot of this stuff, before even the word intersectional was such a buzzword. And yeah, they tried to erase me. They tried to hide my voice. And it is something we very much still deal with. My biggest concern is people who think it's trendy now, instead of really understanding the root of the problems. They want Band-Aid approaches. And Band-Aid approaches aren't going to aren't really going to fix the root of the problem. So it is something we've dealt with on an ongoing basis, but we're still here, we're growing. And so I thank you for recognizing it, if nothing else, that it hasn't been easy, but we are going to continue to show that it's not one or the other, it's everything. We've got to fight for it all, because it's impossible to extract these issues because they are connected.
Absolutely. Another question is, what tips do you have for avoiding palm oil? It is in a lot of vegan products, especially butter. And I didn't want to go into too much detail about this, but I did want to say that we do have a recipe for vegan butter on our website, foodispower.org. That's very delicious. And so you can definitely check that out. We also have on our website a list of vegan products that do not contain palm oil. So they have them crossed out that you can go check out. And we'll send that in the post-event email for you to see. And I think we're just going to do one last question, and that's it. I'm sorry, we're going to go a little over because we do still have our giveaway that we want to do. So just this last question, and I can answer it. Is there a list of good books for children for them to learn about veganism and other issues related to the food industry? And that is on our website, foodispower.org. We have a resources list, books, documentaries that you can check out, and that will also be in the post email. So sorry we couldn't get to all your questions, but we will save them and get to them after the event. We'll send them in an email and try to answer them as best as we can. So drum roll. Are you all ready for the giveaway? So today's winner of a box of vegan chocolate, our vegan, Mexican, and Filipino recipe booklets, stickers, and more goes to, I'm looking, Lee Youngblood. You are the winner. I'm so excited because the chocolate is delicious. The recipe booklets are so beautiful and full of delicious recipes. We'll be sending you an email after the event to get your shipping address, so do keep a lookout. So thank you for staying over. It is 2 o'clock. We made it to the end. Thank you all so much for attending today's event and for your interest in learning how to eat your ethics. Our next event will be on Sunday, May 23rd, and we will be covering yet another group of animals raised and killed for food: chickens, turkeys, and ducks. We'll be talking about the farm workers who pick our food and so much more, with the final 2 events being I'm sorry, they're a couple months after that. I'll send the dates to you after in the post email, and you'll see them on your screen as well. So we will also be sending out a post-event survey to everyone, and we hope you'll take the time to fill it out, as it really helps us with our future events and what you want to hear from us. We're going to end today's event with a photo slideshow of some more happy animals that are living out their lives on sanctuaries. And we hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday and hope to see you at the next event. Bye, everyone.